Hi, my name is Bill. And before I tell you today's Bible story, I want to ask you a very important question. Have you ever had a time when somebody tried to get you to do something that you knew you weren't supposed to do? Like maybe they asked you to tease somebody at school or take something that didn't belong to you. And maybe your friend even said, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. Did that ever happen to you? Well, in today's story, we're going to hear about three men. And these three men had a very important decision to make. Their decision was either to do the right thing and possibly lose their life, or do the wrong thing and be able to keep their life. What would you do in that situation? Well, we're going to find out what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did in our story called The Fiery Furnace. Well, a long time ago, there were three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men loved God with all their hearts. In fact, every day they would pray to God and they would worship God. But they worked for a king whose name was King Nebuchadnezzar. And King Nebuchadnezzar did not know too much about God. And one day he decided that he was going to build a big statue made out of gold. And his idea was that as soon as the statue was built, he would play music. And every time the music played, people were expected to stop what they were doing, come over to the golden statue, bow down, and worship it. Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew that this was not what God would want. You see, God is the one true God, and He wants everybody to worship Him, not some piece of metal. And so after the statue was built and the music started playing, most people stopped what they were doing and went over to worship the statue, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they kept on working. Well, when the king found out about it, the king was furious. And he called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over to him, and he said, "You know what? I told you that when I played the music, I expected that you would stop, you'd come over to my statue, and you'd worship it. And instead, you kept on working." Well, the three men said, "We kept working because that's what God would want us to do. You see, we worship the one true God, and He doesn't want us to worship a piece of metal. He wants us to worship Him." Well, the king said, "I'm going to give you one more chance. But the next time I play that music, if you don't come over and worship my statue, I'm going to throw you into the fiery furnace." Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had a really big decision to make. Either they obeyed the king and they kept their life, or they obeyed God and possibly would lose their life. What would you do in that situation? That's a really difficult situation, isn't it? What do you think they're going to do? Do you think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are going to obey the king, or do you think they're going to obey God? Well, let's find out. Well, the next time that the king decided to play the music, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego decided to keep working. They didn't listen to the king. They continued to work and obey God. And when the king found out about it, he was furious. And he went over to the three men and he said, "I can't believe it. I even gave you a second chance and you're still working and you're not bowing down to my statue." And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, "I'm sorry, but we need to obey our God, the one true God. We can't bow down to metal. We have to bow down to our God that we love so much." Well, the king said, "That's it. I'm throwing you into a fiery furnace." And that's exactly what he did. He threw the three men into a fiery furnace and he turned up the heat. Now you might think that this is the end of a very sad story, but it's not, because God was really proud of these three men, so pleased that He sent an angel to be with the men in the furnace. And no matter how hot that the furnace got, none of the men got hurt. They didn't get burned. And when the king looked into the furnace, he couldn't believe what he saw. There wasn't 1, 2, 3 men anymore. There were 4 men. There was an angel in there. And the king said, "Turn up the heat even more." But no matter how hot that furnace got, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were safe. Finally, the king said, "Come on out of there." And he turned off the heat and he brought the men out. And he said, "I don't understand. Why didn't you burn up?" And the 3 men said, "We didn't burn up because our one true God was with us. You see, our God is the real God. Well, you know what King Nebuchadnezzar did? He tore down that big old statue, and he didn't make people worship it anymore. In fact, he turned to God. He knew that God really was the one true God, and he wouldn't have known it had it not been for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego choosing to make the right decision, even when making the right decision was really hard to do. You know, making right decisions isn't always easy to do. In our story's case, these men were in life-threatening situations. If they did the right thing, it could have cost them their life. But they were willing to stand up and do what was right anyway, because they knew that that is what pleases God. So the next time you're faced with a situation where maybe somebody's trying to get you to do something you're not supposed to do, remember this story, and remember it's really important to do what's right and to speak up for what's right than to do what's wrong. Well, it's time for me to say goodbye, but I'll be back again with another story. So until then, bye-bye.